Hello there, this is Grandmaster Jose Gonzalez. As I promised, I'm going to be covering a promising line to attack the Pirc defense. We can reach the Pirc defense via the repertoire I've been suggesting you in the channel. I mean, when we play the barrier attack, knight c3, bishop g7, e4, d6, we reach the Pirc defense. Normally the Pirc defense is reached after e4, d6, d4, knight f6, knight c3, g6, and here we have several ways of playing against it. But as we have already committed the knight to f3 in move 2, this is what I'm going to be explaining. Bishop e3. The idea is very simple. We want to play queen d2, long castle, h4, h4, h5, and the bishop is really well placed on e3 as it controls c5. We mustn't forget that the Pirc defense is a defense really similar to the King's Indian. They allow us to occupy the center with pawns with the intention of attacking those pawns on a later stage. And the means to attack those pawns are usually c5, e5, and piece. They can attack it with piece played or something like knight c6, bishop b4, g4, or a6, b5, bishop b7, or c6, b5. So the Pirc defense is really flexible, but there are ways to attack it in a really straightforward manner. So in today's video, I'm going to be explaining a game by Anish Giri versus Mamedyarov in 2018. This is a blitz game, but as they are so strong, their blitz games are really instructive. So without further ado, let's jump into Anish Giri versus Mamedyarov. Anish Giri played d4, d6, knight f3, g6, e4, knight f6, knight c3, bishop g7, and we have reached the Pirc. After bishop e3, Mamedyarov decided to play c6. He doesn't want to castle still because queen d2 with the intention of playing bishop h6, h4, h5. So he prefers to play c6, queen d2, b5, now creating a threat versus the e4 pawn. And Giri decided to don't pay attention to this threat. He plays bishop h6, what actually is a sacrifice, but Mamedyarov didn't want to accept the pawn. Okay, this is a blitz. They are perhaps playing in an intuitive way, but as I was analyzing, and bishop h6 is really a good move because after trading the bishops, before knight d1, knight takes e4, and knight e3, this mysterious move is really nice because sometimes we're playing bishop queen g7 and recapturing on h7, and the black king can't castle. So this is really annoying to play as black, and the knight here is really well placed because black can't play knight g4 and cannot get rid of this queen. So the game continued with castle, bishop d3, protecting e4, bishop g4. This is the most usual, putting some pressure on f3 and bringing the knight. But now the surprising h4. It doesn't look promising as the h5 square is controlled by the bishop and the knight. So playing h4 doesn't make sense at first, but as we will see, it does make sense. Then knight bd7 and h5. He keeps pushing the pawn, trying to open the h file, and the king remains in the center, but okay, we're one step away from castling, so there is no problem in this sense. So after e5, okay, the obvious question is what happens if black takes the pawn, and this question was answered in another Giri versus Mamedyarov. This is a trash talk chess.com speed, 5 minutes plus 1 second, and they have played 2 games. And against bishop takes h5, Giri could have got a fantastic position playing simply bishop takes g7, king takes g7, e5. This is a typical way to put some pressure, and at the same time we are pressing here, but we open the diagonal. Knight g8 and rook takes h5, g takes h5, queen g5, and queen f5. If you are finding these ideas useful and you are liking the video, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel in case you haven't done it. Bishop h5, well, should have been answered by this, and e5. Okay, but Giri played something else and ended up losing the game. Knight bd7, h5, e5. This is a normal answer to the flank attack. We respond in the center. This is a classical way to play. Bishop takes g7, king takes g7, h takes g6, f takes g6. Of course, h takes g6 is mate in 2. Queen h6 and queen h8. So f takes g6, and here Giri played d takes e5. He could have played instead queen h6, king g8, and knight g5 with a fantastic attack. Is forced to play queen e7, f3. Now bishop e6, and there are several ways to attack, but perhaps the most straightforward is knight takes e6, queen takes e6, and d5. We are capturing the pawn, we are attacking the queen. C takes d, knight takes d5, and okay, this position is horrible for black. Giri played d takes e5, knight takes e5, and castled. It was better to capture on e5, d takes e5, and f3, bishop d7, queen h6, king g8, castle, king e7, queen e7, sorry, and queen g5. And black is under pressure. We are perhaps playing rook h4, doubling, and bringing the knight. Okay, it depends, but knight d1, knight d3 seems promising. And this pawn has to remain here because otherwise bishop c4 is coming. So black position is really annoying. The king is weak and the pawn is weak. So we have several ways to pressurize it for free. Okay, after knight takes e5, Giri castled, and this was a mistake. After bishop takes f3, g takes f3, and knight h5, Mamedyarov would have been okay, would have reached a nice position. But instead, he played knight takes f3, queen h6, king g8, g takes f3, bishop takes f3, and okay, he wins the exchange, but the king position is so exposed that Giri found a way to destroy him. He played e5, and of course the knight can't move because of the queen h5, the queen h7, sorry, and knight h5 could be met with bishop takes g6, and h takes g6, queen takes g6, king h8, and rook takes h5, winning as bishop h5, queen h5, followed by rook g1, king g7, rook g1, and that's it. So after e5, d takes e5 would lose the queen. Among others, I guess bishop g6 is good, bishop c4 is good. So Mamedyarov played bishop takes h1 and bishop takes g6. He is threatening e takes f6, and h7 would be undefended. So he decides to save the bishop. E takes f6, threatening mate here and here. Queen c7, rook g1. Things are getting really horrible. king h8, bishop e4, and after bishop takes e4, Giri won material with queen g7. We were expecting him to mate, but he was happy by playing in this practical way. Queen g7 takes on g7, f takes g7, and Mamedyarov resigned in view of this variation, and white is a piece up for nothing. So this is the main idea, but there are some other possibilities both for white and for black. For example, in case black plays in move 5, instead of c6 he decides to play a6, then we continue in the same way. Queen d2, b5, bishop h6, and okay, we're offering a pawn that in my opinion can't be taken. For example, bishop takes h6, queen takes h6, b4, and knight d5. Now black can play knight takes e4, but is lagging behind in development, and this will be really nasty. After bishop d3, knight f6, knight takes f6, e takes f6, and long castle. Black king is defenseless. I mean, it's very hard to take him to a safe place. For example, in case of bishop e6, I guess just bringing the rook would be okay, but even bishop takes g6 is winning. The idea is f takes g6, d5, bishop f7, queen g7, rook f8, knight d4, and we are getting the knight in here, we are bringing the rook, and this is absolutely hopeless for black. The knight can reach c6 also, so even when black is a piece up, his king is going to get mated very soon. Okay, so against a6 we can continue with the same plan. Queen d2, b5, bishop h6, castle, bishop takes g7, bishop d3, bishop b7, and e5. We are following a game of Anish Giri again, this time against Mamedyarov. This game was played in 2019 in a blitz. After d takes e5, d takes e5, knight g4, queen f3, bishop takes f3, queen takes f3, queen d4. Black is lost because this knight is hanging, as the rook is hanging as well. So Nepo finds this way to stay in the game. Castle, knight c6. Things are really crazy now, and bishop e4. This seems to win straight away, but knight takes e5, rook takes d4, knight f3, and here, incredibly, Giri played rook d1, and the position was better for black. Instead, he could have played rook d5, and after knight fd4, rook c5, and black loses a piece for nothing. So he was very close from winning, but ended up losing. It's a blitz game. One main question that we have to take into account is knight g4. Knight g4, we can answer it by bishop f4. No, I'm not so sure about bishop g5, h6, bishop h4, and g5, because the bishop on g3 is not my favorite piece, while bishop f4 has a very normal intention. The idea is, if black castles, then we play h3, knight f6, and queen d2, and this is absolutely the same. We're going to play bishop h6, and we have an extra tempo with h3. On the other hand, after bishop f4, e5, bishop g5, f6, then we can play bishop h4, as the black king is really weakened, and we are going to play bishop c4 in the near future, and we are doing really nice. So as you can see, the line is really promising. There are much more details, but all those details go beyond the idea of this video. And okay, I wanted to share it with you. I hope you find it interesting and brings you a lot of points in your games. So see you next time.